Welcome to another edition of Under the Scope. Tonight we begin a series of stories on the world of mixed martial arts fighting. And in round one we take a look at the history and popularity of the sport over the past 20 years. In fact, in 20 years, MMA schools have gotten so big that there's almost nowhere you can't find one. We caught up with one in Newark, Delaware. They are the Triple Threat Combat Sports. And we talked to the owner and the students of the school that not only teaches MMA, but Jiu-Jitsu. And we want to take a special opportunity to thank the CFFC for allowing us to go to their local Philadelphia event to do some footage for this story. Now, let's go to round one.
I think when the sport first started, it didn't get a wide acceptance because there were no regulations. They didn't wear gloves, there was no time limits. Guys would fight multiple times in one night, and it had that shock appeal, and I think a segment of society really liked that. But it couldn't flow into the mainstream. So I think Dana White and his business model is I think that's the reason why it grew so quickly and became so popular. He was very smart about taking the art and the styles and the sport and taking it to the mainstream. That was one of his underlying goals. So he got a commission, he made sure there was rules. He didn't want to take the essence of what MMA was, but he wanted to make it safer for the fighters and more palatable for the country. And it starts to generate revenue and people see that. Then you have martial arts schools who see that and they want to jump on the bandwagon. So, you may have a karate school who sees the UFC growing, so now all of a sudden he's an MMA school.
Kevin Green has been interested in the sport for over 20 years, and he owns a gym in Newark, Delaware called the Triple Threat Combat School, where he teaches MMA and Jiu-Jitsu. So he knows the sport, and his students are not only learning how to compete, but becoming fans and ambassadors all at the same time.
Many people don't usually see this every day. A lot of people run, a lot of people play tennis and all those sports, but nobody really been around for a while. Nobody's seen people in a cage fighting. It's kind of exciting for them.
Sure. My dad has asked me several times, like, I just don't get MMA. Like, most of the time I just see him rolling on the ground, but it's like, well, having done jiu-jitsu for a few years, like, I see what the guy's going for, and like, I can see that moment when he gets it, and then he knows that the fight's over because he's gonna throw the submission in, and that's gonna be it. And like, I think that's cool.
There's no lying in this. You can't lie in this sport. Even the jiu-jitsu aspect, once you get on the mat, it's one-on-one. There's a winner, there's a loser. That's it. There's no, oh, so-and-so dropped the ball or he missed that pass. There's none of that. It's pure.
But another aspect that draws fans in is explained best by Ed.
Multiple things, they have to be ready for everything. It adds an element of interest, to the spectator to see, okay, well, what's this guy gonna do? Is this fighter gonna, go for the submission? Got a submission artist versus a wrestler or a striker. How's it gonna end? Who's gonna be able to enforce their will?
But Kevin sums up the biggest reason for the rise.
Fans of the sport, even if they don't practice it or train it, the fans are getting smarter, and they understand the ground game, and they can see the jiu-jitsu, and the commentators point out techniques, and the fans are smart, and they are excited by that. And I think the smarter the fan base gets, the more exciting the sport becomes, because they don't see it as, oh, that guy's just stalling on the ground. From the untrained eye or somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at, maybe it does look like he's stalling on the ground. But these fans today really know, that guy's trying to pass his guard, and they understand that, and they get excited by that, and they follow the fighters, and they know just as well as the fighters do, who's got what benefit on the ground and who's better striker, and they keep track of that. And I think, the fan base and their study of the sport and the media that promotes the sport in a positive light and the education of, you know, people watching the sport today is what has made it more exciting for them, you know, and essentially lend itself to its growth. I mean, if you didn't understand the sport and you watch one of those fights, you wouldn't get it. But fans aren't like that today, you know, and I think that's really helped.
Well, that concludes this edition of Under the Scope. Let's see what's coming up in round 2.
They're not making it anywhere near the amount of money that they're putting out or that they're risking. A lot of these guys that come and fight, they have, you know, manual labor jobs, or, you know, they're working, you know, part-time jobs, 2 or 3. They don't have any health insurance.
Everybody at Under the Scope, thanks for watching, and pros it.